This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so it is Valentine's Day, February 14th, and we're here with the Arlington Senior Democratic Virtual Lunch. And we have three speakers scheduled today, the first of which is Kim Klingler, who is a candidate for the Commissioner of Revenue of Arlington County. And Kim has been active in ACDC for a long time. And without further introduction, I'll give you Kim Klingler.
Thank you so much, Bob. Thanks everybody for having me today. Just to let you know, right now I can't see your faces because I'm in presentation mode. So I'm going to go through my slides really, really quick so then I can take down my presentation and see your faces. But first, I wanted to share my mug with you. This was a recent gift. Does everyone appreciate that? If you can see it. It's Wonder Woman physically, well, making sure that Donald Trump doesn't come back. Let's put it that way. All right, so I'll go ahead and move on to the next slide. As Bob said, I am Kim Klingler. It is a tongue twister. There's two L's in my last name, and I am running for Commissioner of Revenue. So thank you so much for having me today. Again, thanks for inviting me. I really look forward to our conversation. And like I said, I'll go through the slides quickly so there's more time for conversation. About me. I thought I'd put up a lot of logos. Really to talk about who I am, where I come from. If you start on the left-hand side, I'm a Coast Guard brat. My father was in the Coast Guard. He served his country well. During that time, I went to 5 different elementary schools, 2 different middle schools, and was so fortunate to go to 1 high school. I was also a competitive gymnast during that time, so that really gave me my grounding. But then in high school, I did letter in 4 different sports. I also found Key Club, which is a memberships community service organization, which has really been part of who I am. And I went to James Madison University. So that's what brought me, after I graduated, here to Arlington, Virginia. Up on the top, you'll see my professional career. I started my career at Cerner doing health IT. Then I moved to SAIC, then to Bearing Point doing management consulting. Bearing Point was purchased by Deloitte. And when I left Deloitte, I was a senior manager. So I really had a really good experience with federal healthcare, as well as state and local, and again, management consulting. I really wanted to serve more, so I joined up with ASCO, the American Society of Clinical Oncology, where I ran the IT department. And then I loved my volunteer work so much that I wanted to make a change. And almost 4 years ago, it'll be 4 years next month, I joined up with the Columbia Pike Revitalization Organization as the executive director, now called Columbia Pike Partnership. You'll see throughout my professional career, I did a lot of things for my community, and I also got recognition for it, which not everyone does. So I'm incredibly privileged and honored, and I've had so many great mentors along the way. So I'll keep going. These are my values, and this is why this position just appeals to me so much. Connectivity and collaboration, community and service, innovation, but you really need to make sure if you're going to change and evolve, you need to do so for a reason. So also impact. And we have to have fun, guys, because if we're not having fun, why bother? All right, so just to let you guys know, this diagram is a work in progress. I actually have a graphic designer looking at it right now to make it better. So you guys today are seeing it for the first time. I would love your feedback so that we can make sure it's something that people can understand. When I announced back in December, people said, Kim, that's wonderful. We're excited for you. But what does the Commissioner of Revenue actually do? In a nutshell, the Commissioner of the Revenue assesses. They do all the assessment on property taxes. That does not include real estate. They also are the entry point for all businesses in Arlington. So if you want to do business in Arlington, you have to go through the commissioner's office for your license. And I got to tell you guys, that's the part that excites me, because the past 4 years with the Columbia Pike Partnership, I've been helping businesses on the Pike, helping them to navigate the county processes and other processes. And in that position now, I'm kind of every day kind of pushing a boulder up a hill But in this position, it's so much greater impact. And you could stand at the top of the hill and pull people up. And as you can see, the commissioner's office they really have to work, and they have to partner with a bunch of different groups within the county and outside of the county. So with Arlington Economic Development, I was just at a meeting with them this morning, our Department of Health Services, DMF, Management of Finance. I mentioned the Treasurer's Office before, state and county policy and regulations. So this is not a policy office. There is the ability to influence and advocate, but at the end of the day, the policy and the regulations come from the state and the county. I would also interact with marketing and communications at the county level and CPHD, Community Planning Housing Division, because in order for you to actually get your business license, you must also have your certificate of occupancy. In the meantime, the commissioner's office is also interacting with all the bids, the business improvement districts, the partnerships, all the chambers, and the advocacy groups to really support our businesses and our residents. Because as you guys know, in Arlington, our revenue is a 50-50 split. 50% residential, 50% commercial. And we want to be able to keep that balance. So as Arlingtonians, we can continue to have the wonderful programs and services that our county offers. My 3 big focus areas that I mentioned in my kickoff is enhancing marketing communications. During COVID, we were trying to help businesses apply for PPP loans so they could stay afloat. And many of them did not know they needed a business license. They didn't know certain things. So being proactive, because the office right now has 53 individuals. These folks are bilingual, multilingual. Whenever you call, they'll pick up the phone and they will help you. But if you don't know you should be calling, then we have to work on that, and we have to be able to make sure that we can enhance our communications. We want to make it easier to do business in Arlington. And right now there is such a great foundation in the commissioner's office. But as you guys know, with technology, with streamlining processes, with anything that we do, we can always do better. And we want to make sure this is an easy place to do business. And then, as I mentioned, the current team on the ground just comes from so many different cultures and countries, and we want to be able to leverage that. We also want to keep them, because right now we are living through the Great Resignation, and it's so important that we keep our talent. So real quick, these are the lists of my supporters. I haven't actually updated it. I need to update it again. We need a second board. But you'll notice a bunch of electeds have definitely come out to support me, which I'm so privileged, as well as community leaders and friends. So you'll see Patrick Hope, Rip Sullivan, Barbara Favola, Paul Ferguson, Ingrid Maroy. Oh, and I didn't mention this previously. I'm really speechless, because Ingrid approached me and she asked me to run, because we have been friends for a while. She has seen my work over a decade plus, and we really thought this would be a really good fit, and I'm very excited about that. Matt DiSperanti, David Priddy, Frank O'Leary, Charlie Conrad, Libby Garvey. I'll let you guys read for yourselves, but I would love, if I don't have your name on this list, I would love to be able to add it. And so that is my presentation. I wanted to say thank you so much. And then real quick, to learn more, website kimforarlington.com. You can find me on email. You can find me on social. And thanks once again for having me today. I'll go out of presentation mode now so I can see your faces.
Right. Well, thank you for that presentation, and stop screen sharing,
I'm going to
Kim.
try. Hold on.
So we by tradition have quite a vigorous question and answer process here at the Arlington Senior Lunch, and there is a sort of raise hand function which you can use to get in line. I will start off with the first question, which is, the Commissioner of Revenue's Office has a lot of very valuable data. Some of it is, of course, confidential,
Yes.
but have you thought about how you can make the non-confidential part of the databases more freely available over the internet, or perhaps through AI, so that people who want to serve Arlington or want to understand better Arlington's needs can have it at their fingertips?
I think the answer is absolutely yes. But of course, we have to remember the confidentiality portion. The commissioner's office, that is one thing, is checks and balances and keeping everyone's data sensitive and private. I will tell you, as you saw with my circle diagram, which I'm working on, there's a lot of opportunity to do more with Arlington Economic Development because we can give them the non-confidential data, which then can be published on AED's site. It also can be published right now through the county libraries. There's databases to be able to examine all the businesses in Arlington as well. So there's just a lot of opportunity to use what we already have, but to really enhance the partnership with AED, with the libraries, and with others. And so again, huge opportunity there to make it more accessible so that people like yourselves can help and can help our businesses here in Arlington stay strong.
And Kim, sorry, and Bob, this is Susan. To back Kim up on that, one of the other reasons or challenges we have when we share this information is that it's not always the business contact. It's sometimes a third party, be it their bookkeeper or their accountant. So we don't always have the most factual information to provide that as a resource. And because of the Code of Virginia, that's where the sensitive information we're not able to release. So I just wanted to clarify because Kim said exactly what we always have to tell our customers when they do request this information. And we wish that we had more broad capabilities of spreading, sharing this information, but unfortunately our hands are tied.
The other
Sure.
part too is to make sure we are sensitive and we are following the code because that is the utmost importance, is the partnerships with our bids and our partnerships. Because our bids and partnerships know the businesses on the ground. They might know what their actual name is. So what the commissioner's office does is they share what they can. And then the bids and partnerships can also take it to the next level. And so that's where there's a huge opportunity as well.
Sure. All right. The next questioner is Stuart Scott. Stuart, the floor is yours. Please unmute yourself.
I have. Hi, Kim.
Let's do it.
It seems like there are a lot of new buildings around. I'm in Crystal City, so we're one place with new buildings. And it seems like this idea of having retail at the ground level. But it seems in a lot of places, they don't fill up. Could you just say a little bit, one, about the experience in Columbia Pike with filling retail spots, and two, the potential that you see for new businesses in a lot of these new buildings that have that space, but they don't seem to be filling up immediately?
Oh, lot in that question, Stuart. I appreciate it. So let's first begin with this morning. I was at the Arlington Economic Development Commission's meeting, and this was the topic of conversation. So there were four panelists who are a lot smarter than me talking about this. So it's an incredibly valid question. So number one, in regards to Columbia Pike is actually incredibly blessed in a way that we don't have a lot of office space because our retail vacancy is actually very, very small. You do have a few new builds that have not brought in tenants. One is Trafalgar Flats, which is on the corner of Columbia Pike and 4 Mile Run, right up there. And the reason is being it's 9,000 square feet. They can't break it up into smaller spaces. There's only 13 parking spaces, and they will not bring down the rent. So if someone in Richmond can incentivize businesses to bring down the rent versus taking their tax cut for unoccupied space, that might help us in that arena. But I will tell you, it's about being more creative. Leading the Columbia Pike Partnership, we actually pushed for a form-based code amendment, and that's talking about how you can change up the uses on the ground floor. And so that was about a year ago that we got the amendment through. So now on Columbia Pike, on that ground floor, you can have daycare centers without a special use permit. You can have medical buildings. You can have doggy daycare. You can have breweries. You can have 3D printing. So those are some of the things that I've been working with AED, with CPHD, with the county, with the bids, with the partnerships, so that we can actually get people in these spaces. The good news, Stuart, is that form-based code amendment that's only applicable to Columbia Pike soon is going to be applicable to the entire county. And that's some of the advocacy work that I've been doing. So as I mentioned before, in the commissioner's office, the goal really is to help get the revenue for the programs and services. But there's also the opportunity for advocacy to make sure we have new businesses coming in so they can help generate that revenue. I will tell you, the county is looking at trying to bring in more IT and cyber businesses because they actually need physical space. But from a retail perspective, it's also about flexing on zoning. And this is county board stuff, guys. Sorry, I'm going out of my swim lane for a moment. But it's flexing on zoning so you can have more pop-ups and you don't have to sign a 10-year lease right off the bat. But the commissioner's office, our job is that if a business wants to come, we're going to help them. We're going to help them go through the hoops so that they can get their business license, so they can get their certificate of occupancy, so they can do all the things that they can do in order to generate revenue. I hope I answered your question.
Okay, so again, raise your hand if you want to be recognized. I'll ask another question. You know, every office to be successful needs a metric of performance. And I always got the impression from the Commissioner of Revenue's office in the past that their primary metric is collections. That is, what percentage of assessed property taxes are actually collected. Do you think that's the best metric for your office, or how would you rate your performance going forward if elected?
So just to clarify for a moment, collections is actually the treasurer's office, and that's where it gets tricky, right? So when you assess, you want to make sure you're actually identifying anything you can assess. And that's the hard part. In regards to car tax. Remember, we used to have the sticker we put on the windshield? So it was pretty easy to say, hey, guess what? That person doesn't have their sticker. We need to send them a letter. We need to make sure we have them in the system so we can assess and send them a bill that the treasurer will collect. So a lot of different things happen with key KPIs, key performance indicators. There are a bunch of them right now in the budget book, and I'm actually in the process of reviewing them right now, so this is a great question. There's things more than just, so for instance, let me give an example. The commissioner's office is moving all businesses to electronic assessments. So you need to do everything through CAP, the system which then the treasurer owns the CAP system. This is where we need more diagrams, guys. We need more diagrams. But right now, initially over, gosh, I don't know, thousands, tens of thousands of postcards were sent out to say, please go into CAP, please set up an account. Right now, only 4,000 postcards had to go out. So now it's about getting those folks who haven't yet registered for CAP. And that is a really good performance indicator. How do we slim that down to maybe 500? Can we slim it down even further? There's going to be some folks who are never going to want to go electronic, and we do have to respect that. But in this day and age, we really want to try to streamline that process, make it easier to communicate with these folks, and also reduce waste, mailing, paper, save the trees. So that's a really good indicator that we need to look to as well. But Bob, there's more KPIs I do want to come up with, so I'm going to get back to you on that one.
Thank you. Steve Ferber has the floor. Steve, unmute yourself.
Yes, thank you. Kim, how you doing?
I was wondering,
have you had, I haven't kept up with things 100%, but I know that our new fearless leader in Richmond has been trying to mess with local government at many levels. I was wondering if there's any threats or any problems that would affect your nascent position or potential position.
Oh, you mean position as a constitutional officer?
Yeah, I mean as in the commissioner of the revenue office. Is he?
Your latitude to perform your duties under the governor's proposals.
Without Dillon rules and other problems that they try to.
I haven't heard of anything specific right now. However, at the end of the month, I am going to a forum where they are talking about some potential changes in taxes for businesses. So I can maybe dive into that more after that forum, but I haven't, I have heard of one rumor about getting rid of all constitutional offices, but
Oh,
because of
really?
the checks and balances, because of our political system, I don't see that happening. But that was one rumor I had heard.
And the taxing of like property, I mean, sales tax and restaurant tax, is that more a treasury function?
So the assessment is in the commissioner's office, not property, anything but property. So meals tax, business tangible tax. And if you don't know what business tangible tax is, let's say I have my own small business, which I did start one up during COVID, you guys. I have put it on pause, but I had to fill out a form. You know, what technology, what infrastructure, my laptop is on a desk right now. I'm using a phone right now. You know, are those things that apply to my business that I should be paying taxes on? So yes, the commissioner's office does assess those things and the treasurer's office collects.
But have they been trying to mess with that in our local jurisdiction sense? Or I thought,
Um, from Richmond right now, I haven't heard of anything unless I'm amiss. But if you've heard of it, please send it my way so I can get on top of it.
okay, I
No, please
thought
do.
there
And
was something.
I might find out more in 2 weeks. I might.
Yeah, okay.
You know, I should just tell the benefit of the audience, there are many very small counties in terms of population in Arlington where the office of Commissioner of Revenue is like one or two people. So it's not like Arlington.
I mean, they do, each commissioner's office does get funding from the state. We do get funding from the state, but it is augmented by the county. So that might be part of it, that some of these smaller jurisdictions are not going to be getting as much funding from the state. That could be something that we're hearing.
So you said, did I hear you about 20 people in this office?
53.
Ah, okay, that is a good size. I was just
53.
curious if you had gotten Margot Horner as a supporter. She used to be, associated with the office.
She
Almost
was
became.
one, no, that is a great point. She was one of the first people I called. And
Uh-huh.
she's on my poster board if you guys want to go take a look.
Oh, okay.
Bob does have a copy of my presentation he can send to you guys. But Margot and I had a great conversation. I talked to her a lot about, what do I need to know? What skill sets do I have? What skill sets might I be lacking where I need to, enhance my learning curve? And if you guys know anything about me, I love having a steep learning curve, but I also feel really confident about this position because I've had such a myriad of experiences and background to bring to the table to really, build off of this great foundation Ingrid has laid.
Yeah, it was one of those things where we had a wealth of an excess of wealthy choices. Unfortunately, we had to choose between two excellent candidates that time, and I was just wondering. Thank you.
Okay.
No, thank you. I appreciate
So
it.
Kim, could you please just take 1 or 2 minutes to summarize and make your closing argument?
Closing argument. Um, well, first of all, Bob and company, thank you so much for having me today. I really do appreciate it. I'm incredibly excited about this opportunity to lead the Commissioner of Revenue's office. I'm so blessed to be endorsed by Ingrid Maroy, who's really taken this position to the next level. And what really excites me about this position is it really brings together all of my experience, my professional experience, as well as my volunteer, my community experience. And this is also the entry point for all businesses in Arlington. And that's what I've been doing for the past 4 years, just helping businesses not just survive, but to thrive. Because what we really want to do in Arlington is we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. We talk about these things, and we really want to do them on a day-to-day basis. And that's why it's imperative that this office is proactive, that they really play to the diversity of the staff, and really help us to make sure that we keep our revenues up. We make sure we assess, we help the treasurer's office so they can collect, and that we can keep all of the services and the programs that make Arlington such a special place. So I really thank you so much today. Thank you for having me. Thank you for paying attention. Thank you for your questions. They've been fabulous. I'm writing some of them down for the future. And please go to Kim for Arlington. Please let me know what other questions you have. Sign up to volunteer. Or, of course, right now I do not have an opponent, but we still need to run a professional campaign. So I could definitely use your financial support as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you again for coming, and people should feel free to contact Kim offline with other follow-up. And we encourage everybody to donate to all of the candidates of their choice and to follow the election until primary day. Thank you once again for coming.
Bob, could I ask one real quick? I just want to clarify. I know one of the issues we have right now is the occupancy of a lot of the business buildings, and I don't know if you have any relation to that. I saw something on the news about somebody wanting to grow plants inside old offices, and they talk about conversion to living space. So I was just wondering how big a role the commissioner might have in that sort of thing. Maybe
I mean,
a
the
set.
commissioner is going to have to be able to categorize these new uses as they give out business licenses, but the policy and the zoning is going to come from the county board. But the commissioner needs to be in lockstep because they need to be prepared for any of these changes and to support these businesses who want to bring revenue to the county.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so our next guest is Wanda Younger, who's a candidate for the sheriff of Arlington County. And Wanda comes to us after a very distinguished career, an accomplished career in law enforcement. I'll leave her to tell you all about herself. We turn the floor over and give a big senior lunch welcome to Wanda. Thank you, Wanda.
Thank you, Bob. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to be with you all today. Again, my name is Wanda Younger, and I'm running for sheriff of Arlington County. And I am looking forward to sharing my platform and giving you an opportunity to learn a little bit more about me today. I would like to start by telling you a little bit about myself. Currently, I live in the Douglas Park neighborhood with my husband, James, who's retired from the Arlington County Police Department as Deputy Chief of Police with over 35 years of service in the police department. I have 2 sons and I have 3 grandchildren. My youngest grandson has a disability, spina bifida, so I am a huge advocate for those with disabilities. I've lived in Arlington for nearly 30 years, and we actually live in the same house that my grandfather purchased upon being stationed here in Arlington at Fort Myer, Army based. I retired from the Arlington Sheriff's Office in 2020 as a lieutenant and a director of pretrial services with 31 years of service. I have a Bachelor of Science in Criminal Justice and Law Enforcement Administration. I obtained my jail manager certification and had numerous advanced trainings to include leadership training through the FBI and the International Association of Chief of Police, as well as emergency management training. I'm a member of the National Sheriff's Association, a member of the National Organization for Black Law Enforcement Executives, and a member of National Association of Blacks in Criminal Justice. During my career, I worked in all 3 divisions of the Sheriff's Department. The Judicial Services, which encompasses the services of civil summonses, the transportation of detainees to and from court, and to medical visits. I also worked in the Administrative Division, which encompasses the training section, where I was assigned as a training coordinator, and I worked in the Correctional Division, which is jail. I was responsible during my service for creating and overseeing the annual training budget for the Sheriff's Office, as well as developing and overseeing the annual budget for the pretrial services section. As a supervisor, I felt strongly about the development of staff, so I developed and implemented a promotional assessment workshop, which was designed to help prepare staff for the sergeant promotional assessment. During my time in retirement, I've been volunteering full-time with the NAACP Arlington branch. The reason that I decided to run for sheriff is because I have a world view of the sheriff's office that differs from the other candidates. I have the understanding that the sheriff's office is the protection of the sheriff's office is the last line of protection of the Constitution for our citizens. And that historical context is what drives my motivation and my understanding of the sheriff's office in today's society. Now, you may ask, what do I mean by that? Well, that means that my view of the duties and responsibilities of the sheriff's office changes with what is happening overall in our society. Right now in our society, we're seeing changes in the number of homeless individuals increasing. We're seeing an increase in property crime, and we're seeing resistance to law enforcement agencies and how we have performed our duties. Now, my platform stands for the proposition that I am addressing three pillars within our society: improving the lives of the community, improving the lives of the sheriff's office staff, and improving the lives of those detained. The Constitution dictates that I, as a sheriff, am responsible for the well-being of the protection of the constitutional rights of those incarcerated. That means I'm looking after the well-being of an increasing population of homeless individuals and substance abuse users who are placed in our custody, not to mention those who have underlying medical conditions. Right now, we have mental health professionals working 9 to 5 in our jail. The Constitution and the rights of the individuals don't stop at 9 to 5. We have to have 24/7 healthcare professionals within our detention facility. And I will move to do that to make sure that that happens. Although Arlington has been ranked as 11th as the safest city in the United States, according to an online surveyor, we have been seeing an increase in crime here in Arlington. It used to be that the sheriff's office was more visible in our neighborhoods. The sheriff's office is duly certified, not only in corrections and courts, but also in law enforcement. Therefore, it's time for our sheriff's office staff to become more present in our communities again, and I will work to make that happen. Some say we don't have the resources to do that at this moment, but I humbly disagree. I would argue that the issues of high attrition in the sheriff's office are due in part to sheriff deputies working as at-will employees, which is an atrocity. At-will employment prevents employees from voicing any opinions against the status quo and leaves them helpless to make any fundamental changes in a positive manner. It's time, in a time and age when our workers at Starbucks have unionized, our sheriff's office has languished in ways that things have been done the same in the past. In order to invite capable, sterling candidates into our office, we must change the at-will employment relationship. If we do so, we will have no shortage of applicants wanting to join our office. And once we have capable deputy force, going back to patrolling our neighborhoods will become a reality. Candidate Sheriff Jose Quiroz spoke to you all previously about the ongoing plan to decrease the cost of communication with detainees. And on that point, I wholly agree, and I will continue that effort. But I would also argue that we need to go further. So what is the difference between myself and the other candidates? I have a fundamental difference in education and experience, and frankly, a fundamental difference in the worldview that I spoke of recently. I've earned my Bachelor of Science with honors in criminal justice. I've had advanced training, and I've had years of experience in the Sheriff's Department. My realization of the role of the Sheriff's Office is not just to perform specific duties, it's to lead as a law enforcement head of the Sheriff's Office. It's to hear what the citizens of Arlington needs, and then to use my experience in forming budgets to appropriate resources to meet those needs. Right now, a pressing need is to address the homelessness and mentally ill. But a pressing problem, as you may have seen in the recent news, are the overdosing of high school students and the hopelessness that some young persons are feeling. The sheriff's deputies must act as mentors, and to accomplish this, we have to change the worldview of the sheriff's office. And that change is what I stand for. And at this time, Bob, I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone may have. I think you're on mute, Bob.
You're still muted, Bob. Bob having trouble getting off mute?
I apologize. I apologize. My window got covered up for a second and I lost control of the meeting. But I'm back and thank you so much for your thoughtful remarks, Wanda. Uh, I will ask the first question, and this is the same question I asked on Saturday. I do appreciate you, Kim, and Steve, and Tony all came on Saturday, and the question was that in the 1950s and 60s, Virginia had a model where they really operated very large state hospitals that warehoused a number of very challenged individuals, either ones facing developmental disabilities or, quite honestly, old age or a number of other problems. And then we moved to a community-based model for caring for these people. The millions of dollars that the state had allocated to the state hospital system for the state level care of mental illness and so on did not follow to the communities. What do you think we can do to get more federal and state dollars to fund mental health initiatives in both the county jail as well as other community-based clinics?
Well, I'd actually have to use a term that I heard this past weekend from an event that I attended, which said we have to elect more Democrats because we have to legislate and advocate for funding. And in order to do that, we need uh, politicians, Democratic politicians who will support the use and the advocacy of funding for mental health services and additional bed spacing. We all know that the sheriff's office, the jail in particular, unfortunately, has been a place where we have housed people who have mental health issues as well as medical issues, and the jail is not the place for that. So we definitely would need to do more vote people into office who support the funding for mental health and for additional spaces for those so they won't be in jail.
Thank you. I want to remind people to raise their hands. And Stuart has raised his hand, so I'll ask him to unmute himself.
Hi, thank you for coming to our meeting, Wanda. I think you spoke just a bit about recruitment and retention, but I didn't quite understand what you were saying. But what is the current staffing level? Are there vacancies and any comments on that? And as I say, I didn't quite get it.
Sure. Yeah, there is a shortage of staffing within the sheriff's department. I would argue that we could do a better job as far as recruiting, target recruiting, a better job as retaining those that we already have in the sheriff's department. I do know there have been a few people who have left the sheriff's department prior to this contractual agreement. I think there should be ways to incentivize those not only to join the sheriff's department, but as well as to retain them, to include additional bonuses, not just for the hiring process, but bonuses to retain those who are already within the sheriff's department. I also would argue that we would need a fair promotional process within the department to ensure that those who are already working for the sheriff's department are feeling valued and that there is a fair process um, to advance in their career. There's a lot to be said about being valued and feeling valued. It's not always about the money. It's about feeling valued within an organization. So I hope that answers your question.
Stuart, do you have any other follow-up, or otherwise I'll go to Derek Malice. Derek? I guess he lowered his hand. Oh, he raised his hand again. Derek, you're unmuted. Go ahead and ask your question. Okay, well, let's go to Joan McDermott, and then maybe Derek will be able to figure out his microphone. Joan, why don't you ask your question, please?
Okay. Thank you, Wanda, for coming today and for your presentation. And if I understand what you are saying, you would like to see the Sheriff's Department involved in law enforcement. How do you,
I finished dressing.
what? Well,
I had
anyway,
to put on my clothes.
well, I haven't finished asking my
No,
question.
no, the problem is that Linda, I'm going to put Linda on mute for just 1 second,
Oh,
and we'll call on her
okay.
later.
Okay, so Wanda, could you talk about how you would see the Sheriff's Department working with the police, the Arlington Police Department in law enforcement? How do you see that? Because the Sheriff's Department traditionally has been in charge of the jail and delivering uh, summonses and things like that. So I would like to find out. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan. Thank you for your question. And that's what I was speaking to previously about having a worldview. And yes, Joan, you're right that traditionally the Sheriff's Department has been involved with the service of civil summonses, the jail, the courthouse. But the Arlington Sheriff's Office is fully trained law enforcement agency. We receive the same training plus more that the Arlington Police Department receives. The difference is that the police department is the primary law enforcement and the sheriff's office is the secondary law enforcement. Because we have that training, Joan, we're able to assist the police department, not be the primary law enforcement, but assist the police department in terms of being in the community more, not just patrolling, but actually walking in the community and engaging in the community. And an example that I can give is when I was assigned to the warrant process section of the sheriff's department as a deputy, when I served civil summonses, and unfortunately, I had to do evictions and other tasks of the sheriff's department. I didn't want the community to just know me as someone who was coming there to do something, that is perceived as negative, the service of a summons for court, an eviction. I would go when I didn't have any summonses or an eviction and just knock on the doors, meet with the community, get to know them, to say, hello, I was in the neighborhood. I just thought I'd stop by, see if you had any questions, or just to talk. And I felt that was a great way to get to know your neighbors. Also, when you're more involved in the community, is more of a presence with the sheriff's office vehicle, the uniform. It can aid in deterring any criminal activity. And like I said, because the sheriff's office is fully certified, we can work in conjunction with the police department to be in neighborhoods, just be a presence, work with the school board to find a way where we can interact with our youth, let the youth know a little bit more about the sheriff's department, and just bring some positive mentorship.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, I want to give Linda a chance to unmute. I'll try to unmute Linda to see whether she in fact has a question, because we had a problem with her noise before. So, but Linda, please type in *6 if you want to be unmuted and ask a question. While she's there, she is. Okay, Linda, the floor is yours.
I was just getting ready to drive off, but look, I apologize. Wanda, I'm so proud of you running, and your expertise sounds marvelous. And I look forward to supporting you in the best way that I know how. And I think you're going to make a very good successor, in that position. But I don't have a question, and I'm sorry. I thought I was on mute, Bob.
No, that's okay. You did really
All
well,
right.
and we always love hearing from you. And thank you for joining the meeting.
Thank you, Linda.
Okay, I'll let you all. And thank you. I appreciate everything. It's wonderful. We have great candidates, and Wanda, I just think you're going to do great. You have my support. Just listening to your expertise about the issues, particularly about the healthcare, because I'm a healthcare professional, and as part of health and housing are my two most strongest advocacies throughout my life. And I'm very concerned about those inmates who have been, in the jail system in our county. I've always had a lot of pride with Arlington in terms of its ability to do everything for all of us, even if it's not the best of best. But I'm really sickened by those 6 people and that happened in the healthcare under, for medical reasons. I understand, but I think it's a little more complicated than that as well. Thank you, but bye-bye. I'll let you all continue.
Okay,
Thank you.
next up is Steve Ferber. Steve, do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question, please?
Yeah, thank you, Bob. Wanda, I was wondering, we've had Beth Arthur as sheriff for a good long run, and I didn't have any particular issues or problems generally with her. I was just wondering if you could tell us what you think you would bring to the office that might improve, change things, and do you have any contrast with, any competitors?
Yes, Stephen, thank you. I'll start with the contrast from the other candidates. I have over one candidate, I have over a decade more experience in the sheriff's office, and this other candidate, at least 2 decades more of law enforcement and sheriff's office experience. I have a bachelor's degree in criminal justice and law enforcement. One of the candidates does not have a degree, and the other candidate, I believe, has a degree in another field. And the reason why I mentioned particularly the bachelor's of science in law enforcement and criminal justice, because the curriculum deals with sociology, psychology, amongst other topics. And those topics are critical, especially in today's day and age when dealing with people, understanding why people are doing things that they're doing, why they're committing certain crimes. So I mentioned the degree in particular because those areas really give you a broader view and a worldview and help you understand why some,
Absolutely, yeah.
yeah,
I,
or
I,
really.
I, I'm a, I was a great fan of Robert Kennedy's community policing ideas, and I think I like your emphasis on, you know, obviously there's law enforcement, but there's also kind of crime prevention and understanding why people fall into these, patterns and how you can perhaps guide them somewhere else.
Agreed. And in regards to the first question, in terms of what Beth Arthur has done and what I can do differently, well, I think the sheriff's office should be a little bit more transparent in their operations, statistics. I just recently looked at the sheriff's office website. The last annual report was 2017. An annual report should be provided every year so that the community can see what's going on can ask questions based on the report. So 2017 was the last report that I saw on the website. I think we could improve with programs, in particular trauma-informed care. Is something that I think that not only the residents could benefit from, but staff can benefit from, because trauma-informed care helps you get an understanding of the underlying root cause of people's trauma, of why they are committed the crimes, why they react the way they do. And I think it's important from a human perspective that we understand that, so that we can better help and serve those that we come in contact with. In terms of other things, I think we should be engaged more in the community. As Joan had mentioned before, traditionally we serve papers, we protect the courthouse, but we need more engagement with the community. We can do that with more of a presence, just to make the community feel safe, because perspective is our reality. When people don't feel safe, then they don't think that the community is safe. I think by more engagement with the community, more engagement with youth in schools, from a perspective of mentorship, are just some of the things that I would offer to be different.
Yeah, the stress of today's society after the pandemic, and particularly with the social media's pernicious influence, I think is something we have to think about. Thank you.
Okay, so Wanda, could you just take a minute or two to summarize and close your presentation?
Sure, Bob. Just in summary, my website is wandaforsheriff.com. Please feel free to view my website. Um, and, ask any additional questions of me when I see you in the community. But I retired from the sheriff's office with 31 years of service. I've been actively involved in our community with the NAACP since retirement. I'm running for sheriff because I have the education, the experience, and I have a worldview as well as lived experience to be the leader of the sheriff's office. I'm excited about the possibilities of the sheriff's office, and I'm excited about engaging the community and stakeholders and making those possibilities a reality. I will have my official campaign kickoff this Sunday, February the 19th. It's going to be from 2:30 to 4 p.m., and the address will be provided upon registration. And if there is a link, Bob, I would be happy to place both my website and the link to my campaign kickoff in the chat or comments. And during the campaign kickoff this Sunday, I would love for you to come. And if you had any particular questions or additional questions, I'd love to speak with you again at that time. And I want to thank you, Bob, and I want to thank all of you today for allowing me the opportunity to speak. And I look forward to continuing this conversation in the future. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you for taking the time to visit with us. It's now time for me to introduce our final guest of the day, which is Tony Weaver. Tony has been a member of the Committee of 100. He's on the ACDC steering committee. He served in a number of other volunteer capacities, and he's now a candidate for county board. I will turn the floor over to Tony Weaver. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Bob. Thank you so much for inviting me to come and speak to you all this afternoon. As Bob mentioned, I am a candidate for Arlington County Board, and today I would like to tell you a little bit about my background, my experience, and some of the reasons why I would both improve the county board and benefit Arlington as a whole. I grew up in the area. I'm local. Went to Osborne High School in Manassas. Got my master's degree in business from UVA. And then I went out to Silicon Valley and worked in technology for a period of time. Following that, I went to Memphis, Tennessee, where I founded a medical device startup. And after a successful exit, came back to Northern Virginia to work as a founding partner at my family business, Olson Weaver LLC. Been doing that for upwards of a decade, and it's been an incredibly positive experience. It is fantastic to be able to work with family as well as members of the Arlington community in such a direct way. About, I guess, maybe 6 years ago, about around 2016, the neighborhood of time that Trump got elected, I started doing some self-evaluation and soul searching and decided that I really needed to give back more to the community. I feel as a business owner and an employer here in the county, it's a responsibility to do so. And so I had a friend at the time who was involved with Rotary. So he was the then president of the club. I had always had an affinity for Rotary because I had done an exchange program in high school in Tierra del Fuego, Argentina, sponsored by the Prince William County Rotary Club. So they've always been top of mind. And when I was thinking about how I could best give back to the community, that is what I felt would be the best way I could make an impact. So I got involved with Rotary, and as many of you folks know, if you are willing to do the work and put the time in at any nonprofit, folks quickly give you more responsibility. So I was asked to be president. I served as president of the club in 2021 and 2022. Rotary's work is awesome. We're involved on the international level with combating or providing for clean water in developing nations. A lot of our money goes towards that, issuing grants, as well as polio vaccination. I like to say that Rotary was into vaccines before it was cool to be into vaccines. So we've been working on that kind of at the international level, but then on the hyperlocal level, Rotary is really involved with education, combating homelessness, and food insecurity right here in the county. We work very closely with AFAC. I'm over there every fifth Monday packing food. We did onions last week with Path Forward as well, fantastic organization. And I'm currently responsible for our scholarship program. Rotary has two scholarships. We do an $8,000 and a $10,000 scholarship, and those go towards students, graduating seniors who are heading to college and need additional needs-based support to get them into school. So that's some of the great work Rotary is doing. I certainly encourage you to check that out. And I feel very passionate about that kind of work. We raise about 30 grand a year for the work that we do there. In addition to Rotary, I've been very involved with other organizations. Bob mentioned the Committee of 100. I've served as a member of the board of directors for the Committee of 100. I'm sure many of you are familiar with that fantastic organization. What we do there is create a nonpartisan, kind of non-issue forum to help address challenges and problems that are facing the county. Great work there. That said, I have been super active in the Democratic Party as well. I'm a member of the steering committee, and I think that it's very, very important for us to be encouraging the Democratic cause here in Arlington. I'm a strong Democrat. I co-chaired the Blue Victory Dinner, which is a great way for us to raise money for the party. It contributes to about half of the yearly budget for the organization. In addition to that, I am a member of the Fiscal Affairs Advisory Commission, where I serve to advise the county board on a number of issues and financial and budgetary matters that face the county. So those are some of the things that I've done that involve and improve our community in a very direct and immediate way. In terms of my top priorities for Arlington, I feel very strongly that Arlington County needs to set an example for municipalities nationwide on the environment. Environmental sustainability is incredibly important. There are many things that we are doing and should be doing and should continue to do and improve upon here in the county to do that. First, electric buses. Incredibly important that we adopt electric buses. Alexandria has done it. There's no reason why we should not do it. Set an example. Let other municipalities follow suit. I think that we should further electrify fleet vehicles here in the county. Another great thing that we can do. In addition, we need to work on our infrastructure in general for electric vehicles. We need to partner with grocery stores and other large businesses to get electric charging stations in place. We need to partner with HOAs and condos to make sure that charging is accessible for the majority of residents in our community who live in either garden style apartments or condos, not just folks who live in single family homes. Fair housing is another incredibly important issue for me. I think that I'm fully in favor of missing middle. I think that from a practical standpoint, we will likely see duplexes and fourplexes implemented. I think this will be a good way to increase the volume of 3-bedroom units and inventory on the market that we have a large gap and needs to be addressed. Furthermore, I think we need to think a little bit beyond that and focus much of our efforts on affordable rental units, something that has been somewhat eclipsed in the conversation, but it shouldn't be. The most vulnerable members of our community really rely on those affordable rental units. I think we need to hold developers accountable and extract maximum concessions from developers when thinking about affordable housing units. Increase funds for AHIP so that we can ensure that everybody has a place to live and reside here in Arlington County in the future. Economic development. As a commissioner on the Fiscal Affairs Advisory Commission, this is something that I think about a lot. Right now, the county is facing a 21% commercial vacancy rate. That is a very concerning number. It's a number that is probably underrepresented due to the fact that many companies have multi-year contracts and aren't necessarily using space right now and may not renew those contracts down the road. We as a county have to be focused on this. This is incredibly important because if we do not solve and reduce that vacancy rate, we will face budgetary gaps in the future. What that, of course, means is that incredibly important programs will either have to be cut or delayed, something that we really can't afford to do. To combat that vacancy rate, I've got a kind of a short, medium, and long-term plan. In the short term, I think we need to work to reduce barriers for small business to get into office space. The county's made some good first steps on changing use requirements for office space. I think these should be expanded upon. We can work with the chamber to figure out the exact additional uses that some of these buildings can be used for. That's a good way. That's a good start, and we can do that right away. Medium term, I think that we really need to focus on doubling down on our strategy of getting new universities to come to Arlington. In the past, we've been able to get a number of universities to come. We've got Virginia Tech, we've got a presence here, Darden, UVA, George Mason, Marymount, many other universities are locating satellite programs right here in the county. We need to double down on that. We need to get VCU, JMU, other fantastic Virginia, DC, Maryland institutions to come to Arlington and fill some of that office space. Longer term strategy, we should be considering converting buildings from commercial to residential use. This has a threefold impact. One, will help to reduce the office vacancy rate. Two, it will help improve volume for housing. And three, it has a positive environmental impact because we avoid redeveloping large buildings and reduce the massive carbon impact associated with that. So these are my top priorities for Arlington, and I've talked for a good deal of time here, and I'd be happy to answer your questions if there are any. I'm sure there are many. So I see
Yeah,
some
well,
folks there
thank you.
smiling. Who would like to jump in here?
Well, thank you for your remarks, and thank you for coming and being so patient to be the third batter today. I get to ask the first question. Many, there's nationwide and international agreements on sustainability and climate change, uh, and a lot of that happens at the federal and international level. But there are many local jurisdictions that are taking steps to, quote, decarbonize. It turns out, for example, in New York State, that something like 40% of their carbon emissions are attributable to uh, residential uses, with apartments, for example, that are heated by natural gas, gas cooking, gas hot water heating, that sort of thing. Uh, I know that there are certain Dillon Law rule problems in Virginia, but what are your feelings about state and or local action to address climate change, and what steps would you do if you were on the county board regarding climate change? Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. And the first thing I'll say is it seems like the Dillon rule comes up a lot when folks don't want to answer a question. I've noticed that folks kind of lean back on that, and so I'm not going to do that. And I think that one, the Dillon rule, unless somebody files a lawsuit, you've got that's when you start to see that come into play. And I think that the county can be doing a lot of things. Look at what we've done already. One, we've required LEED certification for county built buildings. That is a great move. That's a great thing that we can do. That's something that we've done. Fantastic. Charging infrastructure. That's another thing that we can really, really do to facilitate adoption of electric vehicles. The reality right now is that if you live in a condo, right, and there is no charging infrastructure, you're not buying an electric vehicle, right? You're not going to do it, right? Even though folks who live in condos are actually one of the best target groups for electric vehicles because all of the vehicles are concentrated in one location every day. To build out infrastructure at one location in a parking garage under a condo is far, far cheaper than to install a charger at every single family home across the county. But what we're seeing is mostly people in single family homes adopting electric vehicles because they have the control over their homes, even though economically it is not the best approach. This is a case in point where government should intervene, right? Because the government, the county, can act. We can work with condos. We can provide incentive structures to get them to build charging stations in garages or Fairlington. I mean, not single family, but garden style apartment infrastructure. That's one positive impact that the county can certainly do, that we don't have to look back at the Dillon rule and say, oh yeah, Richmond's not going to let us do it. We can act, we can do it, we got to do it.
Thank you. I now turn the floor over to Stuart Scott, who has his hand up.
Hi, thank you for coming today. You mentioned electric buses. Arlington's initial plan says that if we were using battery electric buses exclusively, it would require doubling the fleet size. The fuel cell electric buses would not require that, but they're very expensive energy-wise to extract the hydrogen from the water, and it seems like that it's a less proven option. Um, Given those difficulties, we know right now the initial county plan shows only 6 purchases before 2029. And is that enough? Do you see shortcomings in their initial plan for going to zero emission buses?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that probably the estimate of double. I think in the CIP there was an estimate that electric buses would cost double what the conventional buses would cost. And
But not cost. It was the problem of range and the fact that, when you try to heat a bus and it takes a lot more power than a car, so that you'd require double the number of buses given range issues with batteries.
gotcha. Yeah, yeah. So I think that we can be more aggressive on that plan, and I think that we can accelerate it, and that's something that I would be in favor of.
Does anyone else have a question?
Follow-up,
Yes,
do you
please.
have a choice? What do you think is the more promising version, the battery buses or the fuel cells?
Battery. For the same reasons that you mentioned. The technology associated with fuel cell, I think, is not quite there yet. But battery, we've seen on a much more scale, a higher scaled level, and it's getting to a point where I'm not going to say it's tried and true. Look, it's something that we're going to have to lead the way on because we are one of the most progressive counties in the entire country, right? So I think that there will be bumps. I think there will be hiccups. I think it's something we got to do.
Could I follow up on that also? I mean, we obviously already have an installed fleet of compressed natural gas buses that are presumably more environmentally friendly than diesel buses. Is your position that you want to see those buses play out their remaining useful life and then be replaced, or are you advocating replacement in advance due to environmental concerns?
Yeah, I don't want to get too specific on the exact logistics of how that would work, but I think a phased out approach is the way I would likely move forward on that. Just from a practical logistical standpoint, it would be very, very challenging to do a direct swap of all of the existing buses for electric buses on a one for one basis. I think a phased plan is the smart way to go on that.
Thank you for clarifying that. Other people raise your hand or wave at the camera. Steve Ferber, you're next.
Yeah, hi Tony. Good to see you. Um, I was wondering, with the overdose death that we had at Wakefield and the problems we're having with the hard drug, you know, infiltration of the schools. What kind of ideas, approaches you think we should be taking there?
Yeah, that's incredibly challenging, and it just saddens. I think all of us what would happen there. I think that we need to work one very closely with the Department of Human Services. Anita Friedman is great. I think that we need to uh, work very closely or closer between uh, strengthening our relationship between the board and schools. Uh, that's something that has been a little bit dicey recently with JFAC. Some problems there. We need to improve that. Uh, what I think we need to be very hesitant on is taking a knee-jerk response in terms of putting SROs back in school. I think that uh, the data is pretty clear on the very negative impact SROs can have on uh, folks of color in schools and higher arrest rates. And so I understand that oftentimes when a tragedy like this happens, people want immediate reaction. They want immediate steps to be taken. But I think what we need to be doing is working very closely with schools on improving access to mental health resources for the students and intervening before drugs become a problem rather than going with a response that involves putting cops back in schools because we've just seen the problems associated with that.
Do you have any plans to increase the budget, the resources for helping the youth with their mental health challenges, which have always
Yeah,
been
yeah,
and
absolutely.
probably
I think
not
that's
addressed? You know,
I think
not
that's incredibly important. I work really closely with the guidance counselors for schools all across Arlington. I'm sending an email out for our scholarship program with Rotary to all those guidance counselors today. Hopefully that email will go out. It always takes a little longer to get things done than hoped for. But what those folks tell me is that there is a huge gap in access to mental health resources in schools for our students. And that's something that we cannot deny them that access. And oftentimes schools are the only resource that many students have. Folks in more vulnerable communities, they rely on the infrastructure and the support network provided by our school systems to get that support. And so, yes, I think that it totally makes sense to increase budget for improving mental health resources in schools.
Yeah, I was a substitute teacher out in Fairfax for about 5 years, and in today's high stress society, I think, an important part of the schools is getting the children in a place where they can, be in the right frame of mind to learn, and that should be integrated, I think, more holistically into the whole educational process.
Absolutely.
Do other people have questions? Please raise your hands. Feel free to raise your hand. Stuart has raised his hand again. Stuart, you're next.
Just a little on the missing middle. uh, I basically support it, but I have a lot of friends who don't necessarily. And I guess one part of the question is, do you really see a path to more housing affordability with it? We need to increase the housing supply. And secondly, but how do we do it in a way to improve affordability? And then second, whoops, I think I'll have to come back to the second part. Anyway, go ahead.
Okay, good. Yeah.
Oh, I know. The second one. How about the fact that the county board kind of nixed the idea of 8-plexes as part of the upzoning?
They did.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm going to take a different, I think, lens and view on this than many others take because I own a business in the construction space. I am very familiar with builders. I'm friends with many folks who will be the people who end up actually building these new homes. And what I have found is when I talk with them, they feel very comfortable building a duplex, a semi-detached, even a fourplex. And so I think those will end up being the types of structures that end up getting built through zoning changes to make it by right. And so from a practical standpoint, what impact will that end up having on home inventory? I think what we'll see is increases in 3-bedroom units that are delivered through duplexes and semi-detached units primarily. Fourplexes, I think we may see some. Building a fourplex is a very different proposition for a builder than building a duplex. These folks are used to building single-family homes, right? That you buy the land, you knock down a home, you build something new. Whereas when you're building a fourplex, you're selling that for a commercial use to a commercial buyer. And fewer builders, I think, will be comfortable building those types of structures. And there aren't that many lots that are big enough to accommodate them. So I am totally in favor of allowing fourplexes to be built. I'm fine with sixplexes being built. I just don't think from a practical standpoint, many of them are actually going to get built when you run the numbers on the number of lot sizes that could potentially accommodate these and the fact that builders are just incredibly conservative, right? I mean, these folks are like not interested in taking risks. They get something figured out and they like to move forward exactly with what they've got. So that's my general thought. 8-plexes, once again, you look at the lot sizes that would accommodate an 8-plex unit, and then you think in an 8-plex, how many of those units would actually be a 3-bedroom unit that is helping to fill inventory in that space My thought is most eightplexes would have ended up being 2-bedroom units because when I go through Arlington, that's what I see. When I go through Fairlington, I'll see structures that are effectively eightplexes, and they typically are not filled with 3-bedroom units. They tend to be either 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, maybe slip in a 3-bedroom in there. So I think, although it's unfortunate that it got scrapped from or taken off the table, I think that ultimately it won't have a huge impact because not many of those units would have ended up getting built.
Just quick follow-up. So do you see this as a path to affordable housing? I mean, it may take a while, but do you see it as a path to more affordable housing?
So when we think about it, if you're having the majority of the action happening with duplexes and semi-detached units, I see those units primarily being in the 700 to, and I see Bob's nodding there, so jump in there to critique me, Bob. But I see those being primarily in the $700 to $800,000 range. I think this approach will probably have a positive impact stabilizing the market in that category. Above that, I think that below that, I don't think it fully addresses the affordable housing concern. And so I think what we need to be doing is extracting greater concessions out of developers to make sure AHIF is funded for affordable rental units. Because at the end of the day, that's what's really going to drive more affordable housing in Arlington.
Okay, we'll call on Paula now. Unmute
Thank
yourself,
you.
please.
Yeah, got it. Thank you very much. And I appreciate your comments. That was helpful on the whole missing middle thing. My complaint about development, whether it be threeplexes or a McMansion, is the lack of remaining permeable space and tree cover, bush cover, all of that. What do you commit to doing to make this board less responsive to developers and more strict on ensuring that lots are not paved over and trees taken down and covered wall to wall with building of whatever kind?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And I think that we need to focus on preserving existing trees on lots. So making sure that there are the appropriate number of trees left, regardless of what a builder might want to do. I think that's a big priority. And that's generally what I would focus on. Are there, do you have some specific, it seems like you have a kind of it's a pretty specific question. So do you have other kind of thoughts that you wanted to ask about that? Any other kind of ideas in your mind?
Anywhere I drive around Arlington where there's new construction, it goes side to side, front to back. They pave over a place for a car, and there's nothing left. There may be a patch of grass. I can't always see the back, to be fair. I can't always see, the backyard or what's behind the house. But I live in the Ballston area. And if you think about the houses going across, just as one example, and it's certainly not the only one, but the houses across from Washington Liberty High School, there are a lot of new ones there. Those lots aren't big enough for there to be too much in the back. There may be a patch of yard in the back, but it could well be a deck or, a patio or something like that. We've got to do something to limit the size of a structure. Again, I'm perfectly fine if it be, 25 plexes, just don't take up the entire lot, leave some trees, leave some vegetation and somewhere for the rainwater to go so it's not all being pushed into streets and storm sewers.
Yeah, I think that the canopy, making sure that the canopy is preserved and encouraging and putting requirements for permeable pavement is something that the county should be thinking about that would help address some of those concerns.
Joan McDermott?
Tony, I'd like to get your views on the older adults who live in Arlington, who are aging in place. There are 10,000 baby boomers who retire every day. A few of them are undoubtedly in Arlington. But what are your thoughts? This is a good county to retire in, but what thoughts do you have for making it even better and for providing funds to do some things to make it better?
Yeah, Jen, that's a great question, and it's one that I spend a lot of time personally thinking about because my mother, she lives down the street from me in Fairlington. I'm in Shirlington, and she's aging in place, and we're working on a plan for her. One of the biggest challenges that I think many folks face is that a lot of the garden style facilities that they can afford have stair issues. It's very, very challenging for your aging in place strategy to be oriented around buildings that are on the third floor. It's a challenge that my mother faces. She's fine now, but is it realistic to expect folks in their 70s or 80s to live in a third story unit? I think that's really, really challenging. It's something that we really need to be thinking about. Um, and I think that the the changes that we're making with missing middle are a start in that direction by increasing inventory to stabilize prices for homes where the access is not necessarily on upper stories. I think it's a start. I think that uh, condos, uh, they can work better, high rises, because they have elevator access, they have more access for folks. In that regard, I think that's a positive uh, strategy. But yes, generally, I think that it's an incredibly important issue and that we got to be thinking about it.
Thank you.
Okay. Tony, why don't you just take 2 minutes to give us a closing summation and be sure to tell us your website URL again. And again, we do appreciate you patiently addressing all of our questions. I see there's one other hand that was up. Joan, did you have a follow-up or are you done? Okay, she's done. So please summarize, Tony.
Yeah, absolutely. My name's Tony Weaver. I've got a depth of experience in Arlington. I've worked as a business owner here in the county. I've served as the president of many nonprofit organizations. I advise the county board as a commissioner on the Fiscal Affairs Advisory Commission. So I've got the experience to improve Arlington, and I've got a strong plan to make it happen. And that's why I ask for your vote for county board. Man, my website is tonyforarlington.com. So jump on there, and I'd love to, if you can send me an email. Anyone wants to have a one-on-one, happy to do it.
Okay, well, why don't we then? I want to thank you so much for being generous with your time. I want to thank all of our audience for asking so many excellent questions. And this tape will be video will be posted on YouTube, and we'll send that around. And of course, our next meeting is on March 14th, and we'll have 3 more candidates for that meeting. Thank you so much for attending, and we'll see you next month. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Thanks for having me.